Introduce.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Okay, awesome. So for this presentation, I want to make a talk about why each and every one of you in this room can be an activist and change Hopkins for the better. So before I start, I'm going to throw it back to kindergarten. I don't know if you guys remember that far, but do y'all remember how in preschool a kid would steal your juice box or push you down the slide, and the very first thing you would do is run to the teacher? Do you remember how you would stomp your foot so adamantly until you thought you got your justice? Well, if you don't, I definitely do. You can ask my mom. There was not a day in kindergarten that I was not complaining about some perceived injustice that I thought I was getting. And judging by my memory, most of you all were probably the same, because we are all born with such a strong sense of justice. No one is born wanting to be disrespected. But as time progresses, society begins to unravel our desire for equity. Suddenly, bad things happen to us. We get disrespected, and instead of being that kid stomping in the corner asking for justice, we become the other kid, the one sitting in the corner, being silent, counting the minutes until their parent picks them up. And this is something that I see at Hopkins all the time. Every day I see my amazing peers here, people who are literally going to change the world. You guys are going to change the world, and I see you guys accept situations and structures that debase your integrity, and it breaks my heart. It really, really does. And I haven't been a flaming social justice warrior all my life. Like, I didn't do activism at all in my K through 12 years. In fact, there was a time in my life where I was almost a Black Republican. And I say that now. I say that now because I've recovered, thank God. But, oh, whoops, my bad. But I mean to say that in the sense that I was not annotating the autobiography of Malcolm X in kindergarten. And everyone thinks you have to have done that to make change, but that's not true. You just have to want to make the world a better place. Okay, so Hopkins. My high school environment was radically different from Hopkins. I came from a very liberal county, a very progressive county. I have been around people of all races, ethnicities, orientations, all my entire life. So I've grown up kind of knowing how to respect people and how to treat people with dignity. And coming to Hopkins was kind of a culture shock because it was one of the first times I realized that I was going to be around people who hadn't been raised that way. I was going to face racism here, I was going to face sexism here, and I was going to learn how to deal with it. I remember coming to Hopkins and this being such a culture shock for me. This was such a radically different place for me, and I almost thought I didn't know how I was going to make it. I remember one of the most jarring episodes of my life was freshman year. This boy in my dorm, he posted on Facebook that he thought Black girls were ugly. And my first instinct was that he'd been hacked. I was like, no, he had gotten some virus, something else was going on, because I couldn't believe that someone who lived just a couple doors away from me could spew something so hateful. I remember orientation week. My friends had said that they had gotten spit on outside of a frat party. And my first instinct was, no, they must have misconstrued the situation. This couldn't have happened, because I didn't want to believe racism like that could still happen at Hopkins, but I had to. And the difference is that racism comes in so many different forms and ways. There's systematic racism and there's personal racism. Systematic racism permeates every aspect of American culture, but it's so easy to ignore it. You can turn off your TV, you can stop watching the news, you can avoid making eye contact with a homeless person on the street. You can pretend that it doesn't exist. But when you get something personal, when someone says something to you or does something to you, that becomes embedded in your bones, and that's something you cannot forget. You just can't forget. So about this time 3 years ago, so about right before Thanksgiving break in my freshman year, I actually had a transfer application to another school ready, like signed, seals, waiting to be delivered, because I thought I couldn't make it at Hopkins. I wanted to leave and go back to an environment that was more like where I came from. And I thought leaving was going to be the cure for that. But as you can see, I'm standing right in front of you guys because I realized that wasn't the truth. See, I had gotten a bitter taste of reality at Hopkins, but it was reality. There was no other institution in this world I could run to where things would be glossy and happy. If there was a school in this world where there was no racism or sexism or homophobia or transphobia, we would all transfer there in a heartbeat, but it doesn't exist. So in the meantime, we have to work on dismantling those structures in our own institutions. So I decided that I was going to stay. And the question began now, what was I going to do in my time here? I could just stay in Brody, study, be quiet, have a calendar marking down the dates until my graduation, but I couldn't do that. I would have been unhappy. I would have been miserable. I would have hated this place. So I decided that I was going to do what I could to try and make this place better for students from marginalized populations. And two of the ways I did that was, one, by joining the Black Student Union, and two, by taking classes with Dr. Floyd Hayes. So my sophomore year, I joined the executive board of the Black Student Union, which is an organization I'm still very proud to be a part of. And I remember one of the most monumental things that happened was we had a VP who, she sent an email of her grievances directly to President Daniels. And I remember thinking, what is she doing? You can't just email the president. And she did. She was like, is he human? I said, yes. She's like, does he get email notifications? She said, yes. Can he answer them? The answer is yes, he can. And it taught me that if someone is doing something indirectly or directly that affects you, it doesn't matter what their pay grade is, what their role is, where they come from. You can tell them what they're doing is wrong. And one thing I've learned at Hopkins is if you make your voice large enough, people will be willing to listen. And another thing that I really loved about BSU is I've been able to work with the group of students on my exec board who care so deeply about making Hopkins a better place. And I feel like at Hopkins, there's that apathy. And so just being around people who want to make it better is just very intoxicating and very, very something I'm so thankful and blessed to have had. The second thing I did was take classes with Dr. Floyd Hayes. And anyone who's taken a class with Hayes can tell you it's literally life-changing. He's just such an enigmatic person. He teaches you so much about the history of society and culture. And something he always stressed to us was the power that college students have and how there are so many structures in our institutions that would not be here if our predecessors hadn't paved the way for that. So I want to ask everyone a question. Raise your hand if you've ever been to the Office of Multicultural Affairs. Okay, that's a lot of you. Okay, awesome. Okay, I'm gonna ask the second question. Raise your hand if you knew that that building on 30th Street was built in 2006 because a predominantly white fraternity on Hopkins threw a racist-themed Halloween in the Hood party, and the students of color at the time banded together, protested, and demanded a safe space for minorities on campus. Yeah, see, only like 3 people knew that. And people always, like I said before, people always want to say that Hopkins is apathetic, but just 10 years ago, students were like, no, this is not right. I'm gonna do something to make a change. And now for me, I couldn't imagine Hopkins without OMA. And I feel like a lot of people who raise their hands probably couldn't have. And I hear people talk about wanting a women's center, an LGBTQ center. Well, if enough of you guys band together and say this is what we want and talk to administration, it can actually happen. And I think that's a power that a lot of us forget we have, but we all do contain. Now, when I think of activism, I think the most core aspect of it is the realization that if you are breathing, you are a human being, and that means you deserve respect in every aspect of your life. That means that no one has the right to ever place limitations on your achievement. No one has the right to ever invalidate aspects of your identity. Nobody has the right to dehumanize you in any capacity. When I really learned that, when I really embedded that into my life, into my lifestyle, it changed the way I interacted with other people. It changed the way I reacted to situations. I remember one day just looking in the mirror and saying, look, I'm Nigerian, I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm Christian, my hair is not straight, my laugh is really loud, and that's who I am, and that's not going to change, but more importantly, I don't want it to change. In a society where loving yourself in an authentic way, unfiltered way is radical, fighting for your rights makes you a radical, and that's okay. It's okay to love yourself so much you will not accept any disrespect for yourself or the community you belong to. That's a really beautiful thing to have. And a lot of people want to say that to be an activist, you need to know how to speak loudly or write well. You need to be Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, and that's a lie. Literally anyone can be an activist. Like I told you from my background, I was far, far different from who I am. And the reason I say this is because a lot of you guys, I feel like, had similar backgrounds. I don't know how many of you freshmen feel, but I know in my year, many people felt lost at Hopkins, felt like they didn't belong, wanted to transfer. And what I want to say is that those feelings are valid, but if something upsets you, you cannot accept the status quo. You have to go out and you have to seek change because you deserve to have a great time at this institution. You all pay tuition. You deserve to be happy here. And that's something that everyone really needs to hammer down. And even if you are not a part of a marginalized population, maybe you're a rich white male whose dad plays golf with Bill Gates, you can still be an activist, you can be an ally, you can be a voice that conservative medias won't show, you can donate that Bill Gates money to people who need it. Like, you can do so much to help. So don't ever feel like because of where you came from or if you had privilege, you can't make a change. And a lot of people will ask, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to get started. And I'm like, we are in Baltimore. There is so much pain in this city, but there's so many ways you can help. And it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you're pre-med, go volunteer at a clinic where people skip lunch for 2 weeks so they can afford their co-pays. If you're a business major, make a startup that donates money to starving kids in Africa and Asia, but also the starving kids down the street and the starving kids of some of the workers who protect us and cook our food. If you're an art history major, teach art classes to kids in Baltimore because Baltimore City always has money to build a juvenile detention center, but doesn't have money to give kids art supplies, which is inhumane. And so what I'm saying is figure out what you want to do, figure out a way you can do it. If it's volunteering, do that. If it's letter writing, do that. If it's burning down Brody, do that. Just figure out what works for you. College is the last, okay, also don't burn down Brody. I need to graduate, guys. I need to graduate. So college, this is the last step before the real world. How we navigate this space is going to largely dictate how we navigate the rest of our lives. And we are always going to be in situations where people are not giving us the respect we deserve. We are always going to see populations that are not going to give the respect they deserve. And we just cannot be apathetic. Everyone here, if you're getting a degree from here, you have a moral obligation to try and make this place a better place because you are very lucky. There are millions of kids in Baltimore who would kill to have been born with the opportunities you guys have now. And so you have to get out there. When you are being disrespected or you see other people being disrespected, you have to return to your kindergarten self. You have to be that pesky, annoying kid who's stomping and storming and being a pain in the behind until they get the fair treatment that they damn well deserve. Thank you.